Good day, everyone. Praised be Jesus and Mary. Again, this is me, Jessie. So, for today's video, I'm going to show to you my comparative analysis of the language programs and policies of Japan, including the Philippines. So, first, let us know the language programs and policies in Japan before I move to the Philippines. So, in Japan, the policy on the Japanese language was discussed by the Council on the National Language, an advisory body of the government. So although the council was recognized as the subdivision on national language in the Agency for Cultural Affairs, the current policy on the Japanese language seems to go back to the last report of the council. So among the three issues in the report, internationalization of Japanese or the Kokogo Shingikai or the Council on the National Language 2000 recommends promoting Japanese language. So, on the one hand, and changing Japanese so as to make it more suitable for international communication on the language. So, this recommendation consists of three parts. So, we have here first, promotion of Japanese and support for learners of Japanese as a foreign language and a second language. And second, suggestions for communicative competence of Japanese as the first language. And the third, suggestions for dealing with increasing use of katakanago or loan words other than those written in Chinese characters, which are mostly English loan words. So, loan words means in Tagalog, we have it or we called it mga salitang hiram. So that's how the Japanese policies and programs when it comes to their language. So now let's move to um, language programs and policies in the Philippines. So the maintenance of English as an international language for the Philippines and as a non-exclusive language of science and technology. Filipino and English shall be used as a media of instruction and the use of allocated to specific subjects in the curriculum as indicated in the department order number. So the policy aims to propagate Filipino as a language of literacy, to cultivate and develop Filipino as a language of scholarly discourse, and to further its development as a national language with the signing of the 1987 Constitution. So, in short, Filipino and English are mandated to be used as a media for instruction. That is based on the programs and policies in the Philippines when it comes to language. And the policy is as follows. So the policy on bilingual education aims to the achievement of competence in both Filipino and English at the national level. So through the teaching of both languages and their use of as media of instruction at all levels. So the regional languages shall be used as auxiliary languages in grade 1 and 2. So the aspiration of the Filipino nation is to have its citizens possess skills in Filipino to enable them to perform their functions and duties in order to meet the needs of the country in the community of nations. So that's it. So what is the goals of this policy? So first we have to enhance learning through two languages to achieve quality education as called for the 1987 Constitution. That is why the Philippines are mandated to have the both language Filipino and English. So as what I have learned that English is not our second language either, but English is our official language here in the Philippines. So we cannot say it that the English language is our second language to be learned, but we have both Filipino and English as our official language here in the Philippines. So second, the propagation of Filipino as a language of literacy, and the third, the development of Filipino as a linguistic symbol of national unity and identity. So, Filipino here in the Philippines serves as our identity while using this language. And number four, the cultivation and elaboration of Filipino as a language of scholarly discourse, that is to say, its continuing intellectualization and the maintenance of English as as an international language for the Philippines and as a non-exclusive language of science and technology. So as we can see, as we can observe that all subjects, the science and technology, the medium of instruction there is in English. So Filipino and English shall be used as a media of instruction to use allocated to specific subjects in the curriculum as indicated in the Department Order number 25 series of 1974. So as what I said, that Filipino and English language in the Philippines is um, part of the language programs and policy to be used here in our country, which is the Philippines. So therefore, the Japan and Philippines way of language programs and policies may determine on how they use the language in their specific needs. So for Japan, the important in this is first the need for sending information to the other countries about the Japanese nation and its people is suggested by the council report as a basis for international expansion of the Japanese language. That is why the Japan is more on learning their official language, which is Japanese, for them to have globally competitive also in their way of um, uttering or using their language. So second, support for Japanese education inside and outside Japan because of increased number of foreigners living in Japan and learners of Japanese as a foreign language is mentioned in the report. So as we can see, Japan is very particular when it comes to their language, Japanese language. So as we can see, they are also competitive when it comes to economic economic um, So, while in the Philippines, the language programs and policies gives the goal to enhance learning about the language to achieve quality education as called for by the 1987 Constitution for the betterment of every individual and to be globally competitive. Exactly. That is why there are policies to be followed here in the Philippines when it comes to using the language. It is not for us to have um, knowledgeable about the language, but as well as to be more competitive when it comes to other countries, to be able to communicate well in the aspect of using our language, and to also to motivate them and preserving the language. So there's the difference between the Japanese and the, the Philippines when in Japan and Philippines when it comes to using the language, and they have different when it comes to the language programs and policies of Japan and in the Philippines. So this is all for today. Thank you and God bless.